Eli Manning has not looked very good in the past 2 weeks. No, he has not. And it looks very bleak for me because the Giants were my Super Bowl pick for the NFC, and they already started out 0-2. So it's not exactly the bright start, but obviously they can bounce back. Now, when you look at the New York Giants, I think obviously on offense, you can really blame anyone on offense that are not doing very well last night. I mean, I thought the Detroit, obviously they played a very good game, and Detroit's actually a lot better than maybe we think we are. I mean, I personally wanted Detroit to do really well this season. However, I didn't pick them just because they lack talent, but it looks like they're doing pretty well against some talented teams right here. And when you look at the Giants, you could really blame the offense on the board right here. And obviously, you can go from the wide receivers. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr., a wide receiver I've been critical on the past. I made overrated videos on him. 2 of them, actually. Click on the link in the description if you're interested. But, guys, please watch these videos because this is must-watch YouTube. And when it comes to Eli Manning, I feel as if that he is a product of a good offensive line. Now, I'm not saying his offensive line is good, but he needs to have a good offensive line. Because when you look at his footwork's not very good. And ideally, he ain't the most mobile person. Usually that's not a factor, but for some reason, he isn't the most nimble guy, I would say. He just doesn't really use his feet all too well. Now, when it comes to Eli, I think in his past 2 Super Bowl wins, he's usually had a good O-line. And when you look at his receivers, yeah, the receivers are usually good too, but they're never like great. That offensive line for the 2011 New York Giants, I said they're good. That was actually a great unit. His wide receivers in 2011, you could argue Victor Cruz had a great year, and obviously he did. However, I think that he was a guy that had a pretty good season or a pretty good career. Hakeem Nicks, pretty good career. Manningham obviously had a good playoff run, but obviously they're not elite caliber receivers. Receivers are not talking about the Hall of Fame versus maybe like a Brandon Marshall, maybe Odell Beckham Jr. today. And yes, I still think Odell Beckham Jr. is overrated. I know who you are, buddy. I know who you are. But I still think Odell Beckham Jr. is overrated, obviously because people put him on such a high pedestal. But he's very talented. He's better than Plaxico Burress. And Plaxico Burress was a good receiver. He's never a very good receiver. There's a different level of tiers right there. You basically had B-level receivers around Eli his whole career for the most part, and he's yet produced. But when it comes to offensive line, he needs that offensive line right there, just because his footwork is so bad. When you look at Dak Prescott, how he did against the Denver Broncos, he actually looked atrocious. I know Mile High Stadium is a very hard stadium to win by, but when he was getting pressured and sitting back in the pocket, he just really couldn't make plays. And his feet obviously made him do some bad throws right there. Made him do some really, really bad throws right there. And so when it comes to Eli, I think obviously the O-line is definitely something that I feel like if the O-line gets fixed, the Giants are a well-oiled machine. Now, obviously, you could obviously I think Eli Manning needs to play better. I think the receivers need to play better. I think the running backs need to play better. Really, anyone on the offense need to play better. But if you fix the offensive line, that is the most effective way to get the team back on their feet. Now, when it comes to Eli Manning, obviously, it's not all on the offensive line why he's doing bad. The ghost sack yesterday was absolutely terrible. Where I believe it was Ezekiel Ansah barely even touched him. He just went, oh, he just fell down. He's like he just kind of laid on the ground, like almost gave up. And it's like it's the beginning of the game too. So I just see that, and I just feel as if the offense obviously is struggling across the board. But if you fix that offensive line, everything is going to work better. And yes, Eli Manning, obviously, he's not known for being a good quarterback. I'm not saying he's overrated because he has won 2 Super Bowls, and I think he does have a clutch gene in him. So I put him on that pedestal, and he has some leadership. But ideally, if you're going to fix Eli Manning, you fix that offensive line. And I think some good trade proposal right here is maybe they should go after Joe Thomas. Now, why would Joe Thomas be on the trading block? Well, first things first, Cleveland has basically been torturing him. Cleveland Browns should be filed for imprisonment right now because or false imprisonment because they kept Joe Thomas way too long in Cleveland. Obviously a great player, but he never had a chance to win. You put him in New York. That gives you an opportunity to win or at least rebound a team, whatnot, really start something new. I think he could be on the trading block. He was on the trading block 2 years ago in 2015. And so I think that's definitely something that they could possibly go after. And maybe there are some other offensive linemen on the block too. And not only that, there's been a lot of star players in the past year or so been on the trade block. I mean, Richard Sherman's been on the trade block. There's been a story that the Dolphins were aggressively going after Richard Sherman, obviously. That looks a little bit weird, but click in the article right there. I'll put the article in the description and whatnot. And I just look at that's a possible trade right there. Prove the O-line. And if you do that, that can definitely be something good. You have Joe Thomas, something to mentor Eric Flowers, whatnot. That's a good way. That's my number one. There's obviously some other options that they go after. Maybe Joe Staley is on the market, new management, and there are ways to improve this offensive line unit. There is ways, and obviously maybe coaching's the way out. And ideally, yes, the offense. I probably said this a million times. The offense needs to do better as a whole. However, if you improve the O-line, Eli Manning and the rest of the offense will do better, and you will see maybe potentially the 2011 Elijah Manning.